June 7, 1944. Sword Beach, Normandy. A German machine gunner sits in his bunker watching the beach through a slit in the concrete. He sees British commandos advancing up the sand. Then he sees something that makes him think he's lost his mind. A British officer running toward his position. The officer is carrying a sword, a Scottish broadsword. In his other hand, a longbow, arrows strapped to his back. And he's playing bagpipes. The German blinks. This can't be real. The officer stops 50 yards from the bunker. He lowers the bagpipes. He draws an arrow. He pulls back the bowstring. And he fires. The arrow flies through the air and hits a German officer standing next to the machine gunner. The officer drops, dead, killed by an arrow in 1944. The British officer draws his sword and charges. His men follow, screaming. The German machine gunner abandons his position and runs. This is Lieutenant Colonel John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill. His men call him Mad Jack. The Germans call him Der verrückte Engländer, the crazy Englishman. And they're right, because Mad Jack Churchill is the only British officer in World War II who went into battle with a sword, a bow, and bagpipes. And he's the only man confirmed to have killed an enemy soldier with an arrow. This is his story.
Let's go back to the beginning. John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill was born in Hong Kong in 1906. His father was a British civil servant stationed in the Far East. Churchill grew up in England, educated at King William's College on the Isle of Man, then the Royal Military College at Sandhurst. He graduated in 1926 and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Manchester Regiment. But Churchill wasn't interested in a normal military career. He was bored. In 1936, he left the army and moved to London. He became an actor. He appeared in a movie called The Thief of Baghdad in 1940. He also became a champion archer. Churchill won second place in the British National Archery Championships. He was one of the best archers in the country. He also learned to play the bagpipes. Why? Because he thought it was interesting. Churchill was eccentric. Everyone who knew him said so. He didn't care about rules or conventions. He did what he wanted. When World War II broke out in September 1939, Churchill immediately rejoined the army. He was 33 years old. He requested assignment to a combat unit. The army sent him to France with the British Expeditionary Force. Churchill was excited. Finally, a real war.
May 1940. Norway. The British Expeditionary Force is fighting a losing battle against the Germans. Churchill is commanding a unit near the town of Vågsøy. The Germans are advancing. Churchill's orders are to delay them. On May 27th, Churchill and his men set up an ambush. German troops are moving down a road. Churchill orders his men to hold fire. He wants to try something. He pulls out his longbow. His men stare at him. Churchill knocks an arrow. He draws the bowstring. A German officer is walking at the front of the column. Churchill aims. He releases. The arrow flies 40 yards and hits the German officer in the chest. The officer collapses. Churchill's men open fire. The Germans scatter. This is the first confirmed kill with a bow and arrow in World War II. Churchill is thrilled. His men think he's insane. One of his soldiers, Private Bill Millen, later said, "We thought the colonel had gone mad. Who brings a bow to a gunfight?" Churchill's answer, "Why not?" After Norway, the British Expeditionary Force retreated. The Germans were winning. In June 1940, Churchill and his men were evacuated from France during the Dunkirk evacuation. As his unit waited on the beach for boats, German planes strafed them. Churchill stood on the sand playing his bagpipes. He played "Will You No Come Back Again." His men were diving for cover. Churchill kept playing. When asked why, he said, "It calmed the men." The men disagreed, but Churchill didn't care. After Dunkirk, Churchill volunteered for the Commandos. The Commandos were a new unit, elite raiders, specially trained for amphibious assaults and behind-the-lines operations. Churchill loved the idea. In December 1941, Churchill participated in Operation Archery, a commando raid on the Norwegian island of Vågsøy. The objective was to destroy German installations and capture prisoners. Churchill led the first wave ashore. He was carrying his sword and bagpipes. As the landing craft approached the beach, Churchill stood up and played the March of the Cameron Men on his pipes. German soldiers on the shore stared in confusion. Then Churchill's men opened fire. The raid was a success. Churchill personally captured several German soldiers. He also led a charge on a German headquarters building, sword in hand. His men followed him, throwing grenades and firing submachine guns. Churchill kicked down the door and rushed inside, swinging his sword. The Germans inside surrendered immediately. They thought he was a madman. They were right. After the raid, Churchill's commanding officer asked him why he insisted on carrying a sword. Churchill replied, "Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed." That became his motto. He believed it completely. July 1943, Sicily. The Allied invasion of Italy begins. Churchill and his commandos land at Catania. Their objective is to capture a German coastal battery. Churchill leads his men ashore, playing his bagpipes. Again, by now this is his trademark. The Germans hear the pipes and think the British are insane. Churchill and his men storm the battery. Churchill is in front, sword drawn. His men are firing rifles and throwing grenades. Churchill is swinging his sword. The Germans retreat. Churchill's unit captures the position, but they're now cut off. German reinforcements are closing in. Churchill orders his men to dig in and hold. For 2 days, Churchill's unit holds the position against repeated German counterattacks. Churchill moves between positions, directing fire, encouraging his men, and playing his bagpipes. During one German attack, Churchill stood on top of a bunker, playing blue bonnets over the border while bullets zipped past him. His men screamed at him to get down. Churchill finished the song. Then he got down. One of his sergeants, Jack Churchill, no relation, said, "The colonel was either the bravest man I ever met or the craziest, probably both." The position held. Reinforcements arrived. Churchill's men were relieved. The battery remained in Allied hands. Churchill was awarded the Distinguished Service Order for his actions in Sicily. September 1943, Salerno, Italy. The Allied invasion of mainland Italy. Churchill and his commandos land on the beach under heavy fire. German artillery is pounding the landing zone. Men are dying all around. Churchill leads his unit inland. They're tasked with capturing a German observation post overlooking the beach. The post is on a hill, heavily defended. Churchill orders his men to attack. He goes first, sword in hand. His men follow. They charge up the hill under machine gun fire. Halfway up, Churchill's men go to ground. The fire is too heavy. Churchill keeps going, alone. He reaches the German position. There are 10 Germans in the bunker. Churchill kicks open the door and rushes inside, swinging his sword. The Germans are too surprised to react. Churchill disarms 2 of them. The others surrender. Churchill's men reach the position and secure it. Churchill is uninjured. His sword is bloody. One of the German soldiers, interrogated later, said through a translator, "The British officer was like something from the Middle Ages. We thought we were being attacked by a ghost." Churchill took that as a compliment. June 1944, Normandy, D-Day.
Churchill's Commando unit lands on Sword Beach on June 7th, the day after the initial landings. Their objective is to link up with British airborne troops who'd landed inland and were cut off. Churchill leads his men off the landing craft, playing his bagpipes. The beach is still under German fire. Churchill doesn't care. He marches up the sand, pipes playing, sword strapped to his back, bow in hand. His men follow. They think he's trying to get them all killed. But Churchill believes that morale matters. If the men see their commander fearless, they'll be fearless too. It works. Churchill's unit advances quickly. They encounter German resistance, a machine gun nest on a ridge. Churchill stops. He puts down his bagpipes. He unslings his bow. He draws an arrow. There's a German officer standing near the machine gun, directing fire. Churchill aims. He releases. The arrow flies 80 yards. It hits the German officer in the neck. The officer falls. Churchill's men charge the position. The Germans retreat. This is the kill that makes Churchill famous, the only confirmed bow and arrow kill in World War II. Witnesses include multiple British soldiers. The kill is documented in after-action reports. Churchill later said, "I always wanted to shoot a German with an arrow. Seemed more sporting than a rifle."
July 1944, Normandy, near Caen. Churchill's unit is advancing through hedgerow country, bocage, narrow lanes, high hedges, perfect for ambushes. Churchill is leading a patrol, 20 men. They're moving cautiously. Suddenly, German fire erupts from the hedges, machine guns. Churchill's men hit the ground. Churchill doesn't. He stands up, draws his sword, and charges toward the German position. His men think he's finally lost it. But Churchill reaches the hedge and starts hacking through it with his sword. The Germans are so surprised, they stop firing. Churchill breaks through the hedge and finds himself face to face with 5 German soldiers. He points his sword at them and shouts in German, "Hände hoch," hands up. The Germans drop their weapons and surrender. Churchill's men catch up. They're stunned. Churchill just captured 5 Germans with a sword. One of his corporals said, "Sir, you can't keep doing that. You're going to get killed." Churchill replied, "Nonsense. The Germans are too confused to shoot me." He was right. The Germans didn't know what to make of him, and that confusion kept him alive. August 1944, France near Paris. Churchill's unit is tasked with holding a bridge against German counterattack. The bridge is critical. If the Germans retake it, the Allied advance will be delayed. Churchill positions his men. They dig in. They wait. At dawn, the Germans attack. 50 soldiers, supported by 2 armored cars. Churchill's unit is outnumbered, but Churchill has a plan. He orders his men to hold fire until the Germans are on the bridge. Then he stands up on the parapet, fully exposed, and starts playing his bagpipes. The Germans are so confused they hesitate. That's when Churchill's men open fire. The Germans are caught in the open. They take heavy casualties. The armored cars retreat. The German infantry falls back. Churchill keeps playing. His men later said the bagpipes were scarier than the German gunfire. The position holds. The bridge stays in Allied hands. Churchill is awarded a bar to his Distinguished Service Order. His commanding officer writes in the citation, "Lieutenant Colonel Churchill's unconventional tactics and personal courage continue to inspire his men and confound the enemy." September 1944, Yugoslavia. The British are supporting Tito's partisans against German occupation forces. Churchill volunteers for a mission. He's to parachute into Yugoslavia, link up with the partisans, and coordinate attacks on German supply lines. Churchill jumps at night. He lands in a forest. He's carrying his sword, his bagpipes, and a pack of supplies. No bow this time, too bulky. Churchill links up with the partisans. They're skeptical. This British officer with a sword and bagpipes? They think the British are joking. Churchill proves himself quickly.
He leads a raid on a German supply depot. The raid is a success. The partisans respect him. One partisan commander, Velimir Terzic, later wrote, "The British colonel was insane, but he was brave and he knew how to fight." Churchill spends weeks in Yugoslavia, organizing ambushes and raids. He's in his element. This is the kind of irregular warfare he loves. October 1944, Yugoslavia. Churchill is leading a group of partisans on a raid against a German garrison. The garrison is in a small town, 42 German soldiers. Churchill has 40 partisans. The plan is to attack at night, but Churchill has a better idea. Instead of attacking, he's going to trick the Germans into surrendering. At midnight, Churchill and 6 of his men approach the town. Churchill starts playing his bagpipes loudly. The Germans wake up. They hear the pipes, they hear shouting. Churchill is shouting orders in German. Commands like, "First company, advance," and "Second company, flank right." The Germans think they're being attacked by a large force. They panic. The German commander orders his men to surrender. 42 German soldiers walk out of the garrison with their hands up. Churchill and his 6 men take them prisoner. The partisans arrive and are stunned. Churchill captured 42 Germans with 6 men and bagpipes. Terzic said, "I didn't believe it until I saw it. The British colonel is a magician." November 1944, Yugoslavia. Churchill's luck runs out. He's leading a patrol near the town of Dravar. They walk into a German ambush. Machine gun fire from 3 sides. Churchill's men are cut down. Churchill tries to fight back, but he's outnumbered. A grenade explodes near him. He's knocked unconscious. When he wakes up, he's a prisoner. The Germans have captured him. They take his sword, they take his bagpipes. Churchill is devastated, not because he's been captured, because they took his equipment. Churchill is transported to a POW camp in Germany. The Germans don't know who he is. They think he's a regular British officer. If they knew he was Mad Jack Churchill, the man who killed Germans with arrows and swords, they might have treated him differently. But they don't know. Churchill is sent to Sachsenhausen concentration camp near Berlin. Sachsenhausen is not a normal POW camp. It's a concentration camp. Political prisoners, Soviet officers, and a few British prisoners considered high risk. Churchill is classified high risk because of his commando background. The conditions are brutal. Churchill is held in a special section with other Allied prisoners. He immediately starts planning an escape. December 1944, Sachsenhausen. Churchill studies the camp layout. He talks to other prisoners. He learns the guard routines. He identifies weak points. In early January 1945, Churchill makes his move. He escapes with a British RAF officer. They cut through a wire fence at night and slip out of the camp. They head west, toward the Allied lines. For 8 days, Churchill and the RAF officer walk through enemy territory. They avoid roads. They sleep in barns. They steal food from farms. They're 150 miles from the front lines, but they're making progress. On the 8th day, they're near the town of Rostock on the Baltic coast. They're 20 miles from the sea. Churchill plans to steal a boat and sail to Sweden. But they're spotted by a German patrol. They're recaptured. Churchill is furious. He was so close. The Germans send him to a different camp, this time a POW camp in Austria, marked Pongau. The Germans think he'll be more secure there. They're wrong. March 1945, marked Pongau POW camp, Austria. Churchill has been here for 2 months. He's already planning another escape. This camp is less secure than Sachsenhausen. It's in the mountains, but the guards are older, less vigilant. Churchill convinces 2 other British officers to escape with him. On the night of April 23rd, they cut through the fence and slip out. They head south into the Alps.
Their plan is to reach Italy, which is controlled by the Allies. It's 150 miles through mountain terrain. No food, no maps, just determination. For 10 days, Churchill and his companions walk. They climb mountains, they cross rivers, they avoid German patrols. Churchill is 58 years old. Wait, no, he's 38. Still, he's exhausted, starving, but he keeps moving. On May 3rd, they see Allied aircraft overhead, American planes. They're close. The next day, they encounter an American armored column near the town of Verona, Italy. Churchill walks up to the lead tank, filthy, unshaven, wearing a tattered British uniform. The American lieutenant in the tank stares at him. "Who the hell are you?"
Churchill draws himself up. Lieutenant Colonel John Churchill, British Army. The American doesn't believe him. "Sure you are, and I'm General Patton." Churchill realizes he needs to prove his identity. He looks around. He spots a set of bagpipes in the wreckage of a nearby building. Some British unit must have passed through. Churchill picks up the pipes. He starts playing. The Barren Rocks of Aden. The Americans stare. This filthy, half-starved man is playing bagpipes? Perfectly. The American lieutenant radios his commander. "Sir, we've got a situation. There's a British guy here playing bagpipes. Says he's a lieutenant colonel." The American commander arrives. He recognizes Churchill from intelligence briefings. Mad Jack Churchill, the legend. Churchill is taken to Allied headquarters. He's debriefed. He's fed. He's given a new uniform. And then he learns the news. The war in Europe is over. Germany surrendered on May 8th, 5 days ago. Churchill is devastated. He missed the end of the war. He later said, famously, "If it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years. He meant it. May 1945. Churchill is back in England. The war in Europe is over, but the war against Japan continues. Churchill immediately volunteers to fight in the Pacific. He wants to go to Burma to fight the Japanese. The British Army agrees. Churchill is sent to Burma for training. But before he can deploy, the United States drops atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrenders on August 15th. Churchill is furious. He's missed another war. He later wrote in his diary, "I was looking forward to the Pacific. The Japanese would have appreciated a proper sword fight." Churchill's war is over. He'd fought in Norway, France, Italy, Yugoslavia. He'd killed a man with an arrow. He'd captured 42 Germans with bagpipes. He'd escaped from 2 POW camps. He'd walked 150 miles through the Alps. And he'd survived. Churchill was awarded the Distinguished Service Order twice and the Military Cross. He was one of the most decorated British officers of the war. But Churchill didn't care about medals. He cared about the fight. And now there were no more fights. After the war, Churchill stayed in the army. He served in various posts. He was sent to Palestine in 1946 during the Jewish insurgency. Churchill commanded a battalion. He was as aggressive as ever. In one incident, Churchill led a raid on a suspected insurgent hideout. He kicked down the door, sword in hand. The occupants surrendered immediately. In 1948, Churchill retired from the army with the rank of lieutenant colonel. He was 42 years old. He moved to Australia for a few years, then returned to England. Churchill took up new hobbies. He became an avid surfer. At age 50, he became the first man to ride the tidal bore on the River Severn, a standing wave that travels up the river. Churchill rode it on a surfboard. He also developed a passion for steam trains. He worked as a volunteer on heritage railways. And he continued to play the bagpipes, loudly. His neighbors complained. Churchill didn't care. In interviews, Churchill was asked about his wartime exploits. He always downplayed them. I just did my job. It was a war. You do what you have to do.
But Churchill's men remembered him differently. Bill Millen, who served with Churchill in France, said, "The colonel was mad, absolutely mad, but he was the best officer I ever served under. He led from the front. He never asked us to do anything he wouldn't do, and he made us believe we were invincible." Another soldier, Robert Dawson, said, "Churchill saved my life more times than I can count, not because he was trying to, but because when you're following a man with a sword and bagpipes into battle, you fight harder. You don't want to let him down." The Germans remembered him too. In the 1970s, a British historian interviewed former German soldiers who'd fought against Churchill. One of them, Hans Becker, said, "We heard about der verrückte Engländer, the crazy Englishman with the sword. We thought it was propaganda, British psychological warfare. Then we saw him. He was real, and he was terrifying. Not because of the sword, but because he acted like bullets couldn't touch him. It made us think maybe they couldn't." That was Churchill's secret. He believed he was invincible, and that belief was contagious. Churchill's most famous quote came from an interview in 1978. He was 72 years old. The interviewer asked him about his sword. "Why did you carry a sword into battle?" Churchill replied, "Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. I also brought my bagpipes and my bow. A gentleman should be properly equipped." The interviewer asked, "Weren't you afraid of being killed?" Churchill smiled. "Of course I was afraid, but fear is useful. It sharpens the mind. The trick is not to let fear control you. You control it." The interviewer asked, "What was the most dangerous moment of the war?" Churchill thought for a moment. "Being captured, not because I thought I'd die, but because it meant I couldn't fight anymore. That was the worst part." Churchill lived to age 89. He died in March 1996. He was buried with military honors. His sword and bagpipes were displayed at his funeral. Here's what Churchill proved. You don't need to follow the rules to be effective. Churchill broke every rule. He carried medieval weapons into a modern war. He played music under fire. He charged machine guns with a sword. And it worked. Not because the weapons were effective, a sword is useless against a machine gun, but because Churchill's tactics were psychological. He confused the enemy. He inspired his men. He made the impossible seem possible. The British Army studied Churchill after the war. They didn't adopt his tactics, but they learned from his mindset. Aggression, initiative, unpredictability. These are force multipliers. Churchill's legacy isn't the kills he made, it's the example he set. He showed that one man with courage and creativity can change the outcome of a battle, and that fear of death is less important than fear of not living fully. Fast forward to today. Mad Jack Churchill is a legend. In 2006, the British Ministry of Defense released previously classified files about Churchill. The files confirmed all the stories: the arrow kill, the sword charges, the bagpipes, the escapes, all true. In 2012, a historian named Rex Last published a biography of Churchill. The book became a bestseller in Britain. It introduced a new generation to Mad Jack. Today, Churchill is remembered as one of the most eccentric and effective officers of World War II. The sword he carried is on display at the Royal Armouries Museum in Leeds. His bagpipes are in a private collection, but his legacy lives on. In the Special Air Service, the elite British Special Forces unit, Churchill is a legend. SAS officers study his tactics, not the sword and bagpipes, but the mindset, aggression, unpredictability, leading from the front. That's Churchill's legacy. He didn't just fight a war, he fought it his way. And he proved that sometimes the craziest plan is the best plan. Remember Mad Jack Churchill, the man who brought a sword to a gunfight. And 1.